So the first one, remember the order you want to factor first. So if I factor the denominator here, I get x plus 2 and x minus 2. Then I want to do the domain. So domain is the not equals, and I get domain negative infinity. It'll catch up eventually. Negative 2, I hope. And then negative 2 to 2, and then 2 to positive infinity. Then I want to check for holes. Is there a hole? No. So if there was a hole, I would cancel through and I proceed after that. But there is no holes, which means I can go to the next thing, which would be vertical asymptotes. Asymptotes, which would be setting these equal to 0. X equals negative 2 and x equals positive 2. The exponent in the top is the same as the bottom, so your horizontal asymptote is the leading coefficients. Y equals negative 2 over 1, so negative 2. The zeros come from your numerator, so if I set this equal to 0, I end up with x squared equals 0 and x equals plus and minus the square root of 0, which is 0. But there's a multiplicity of 2, and why is that important? It bounces. Good. So my vertical asymptote, negative 2, positive 2, horizontal asymptote at y equals negative 2. Bounces off a 0, which means it's going to take on that parabola shape. And there's no other 0, which means where are those little corners going? Good. Bottom left and bottom right. And if you were unsure, okay, I would plug in a point. Plug in something to the right of 2, to the left of negative 2, and it would fall below your x, below the horizontal asymptote. Because if it's a parabola, it doesn't bounce through. It won't cross through. A cubic shape can cross through, but a parabola won't.
Won't cross through the asymptote?
Correct.
So if it's
yeah, as long as it's got y-axis symmetry, it has all those things. But if you're unsure, you could plug in 1. You could plug in negative 1. You could plug in 3. You could plug in negative 3, and all those points will either the negative 1 and 1 will be above, and the negative 3 and 3 would be below. So you would know. So my advice is plot what you know right away. Finish your test. I think you should be able to finish this test in time. Your possible roots are not going to be impossible to try. I feel like if you mess that stuff up, it's going to take longer. But you should have time to be able to plot some points if you need them. All right, second one. This time I start again factoring, and I get x plus 3 and x minus 3 over x minus 3. I do domain first. So domain is that it can't equal 0 and x cannot equal 3. So domain is negative infinity to 3 and 3 to positive infinity. Then check for your hole. This time there is one. If I cross through the x minus 3's in the top and the bottom, I know there's a hole. If I solve that, it's at positive 3. And then everything else after this comes from my new equation, which is f of x equals x plus 3. That is just a line, but it still has a hole. So I take the 3 and I plug it into the new thing to get the y coordinate of my hole, which is 6. There are no vertical asymptotes because it's a line. There are no horizontal asymptotes. There's no slant. If I graph this, I'd start at positive 3 because that's my y-intercept. I'd go up 1 and to the right 1 or down 1 and to the left 1. And it would be a line that looks like this with a hole at 3, 6. So it literally just looks like that. You're getting 2 of these 3 types. So you're getting either a horizontal and a vertical asymptote, or horizontal and slant, or vertical and slant, or hole. Like obviously 2 of those 3 scenarios is going to happen. The third one says, again, same set of instructions. I'm going to start the same way. I'm going to factor. So if I factor in the numerator, this is first times last. That's 10. Factors of 10 that sum to negative 7, negative 2, negative 5. Plug those in. And factor by grouping. Take out a 2x and I get x minus 1. Take out a negative 5 and I get x minus 1. X minus 1. 2x minus 5 is the numerator. X minus 3 is the denominator. Now domain. cannot equal 3, so negative infinity to 3. 3 to positive infinity. There's no hole. So vertical asymptotes come from x equals 3. Exponent in the top is 1 more than the bottom, which means no horizontal asymptote, but there is a slant. So I'm going to divide the top by the bottom. You can use synthetic this time because it's just x to the first. 2, negative 7, 5, bring down the 2, 6, negative 1, and the end doesn't even matter. My slant is y equals 2x minus 1. The zeros come from your numerator. 1 and 5 halves, or 2 and a half. And then I go to the graph. Vertical asymptote at y equals 3. Slant at y equals 2x minus 1. So I start at negative 1, and my slope is up 2 over 1, or down 2 and over 1. So my slant asymptote is this. My zeros are at 1 and 2 and a half. And the y-intercept, oh, I didn't do that on the other ones. The y-intercept, I would zero all these, and I'd get negative 5 over 3, or negative 1 and 2/3. So I know it's in this little corner down here. And they go in opposite corners, so I know it's up here. If you were unsure, you could plug in 4, and you'd find that point above the slant asymptote. Questions on that one? The what? Set the numerator equal to 0. Yep, after you factor it. All right, last one. Again, asymptote, or set factor first. Yeah. The bottom, x plus 4, x minus 4. Domain, x can't equal negative 4 or positive 4, so negative infinity to negative 4. Negative 4 to 4, and 4 to positive infinity. There are no holes. Vertical asymptote is x equals 4 and x equals negative 4. The exponent in the top is less than the bottom, so my horizontal asymptote is y equals 0. There is no slant. The 0, and there's only 1, is negative 3, comes from the numerator. Y-intercept, plug in your zeros, and I get negative 3/16. Negative 4, positive 4, horizontal asymptote at 0. 0 at negative 3, and a y-intercept at 0, negative 3/16. So because it hits that x-axis, I know it's going to cross through it, right? It doesn't have symmetry, it doesn't bounce at 0, so I know that this graph does something like this. Again, if I was unsure, I would plug in like 1. If I plug in 1, I'd get 1 plus 3 over 1 minus 16, 4 over negative 15. I know it's below the x-axis, which confirms that shape. Now the outer 2, I could plug in negative 5 or positive 5. If I plug in positive 5, 5 plus 3 over 25 minus 16, 8/9. So it's above. I know it goes this way. And if it's a cubic shape in the inside, they go opposite directions, so I'm assuming it's here. But I would know for sure by plugging in negative 5. Negative 5 plus 3, 25 minus 16 is negative 2/9. And I know it's below the x-axis. Yeah. Because the exponent in the top is not 1 more than the bottom. Slant is 1 more. It can cross a horizontal. It can't touch a vertical, but it can cross a horizontal. Yep. In the middle. Yeah.
So slant can only happen if there's no horizontal.
Correct. Slant and horizontal cannot exist together. Yep. Yep.